Well, welcome everyone to the Georgetown Business Improvement District annual meeting. First and foremost, I hope you are all well, healthy, and safe, and your families are as well. Our annual meetings are typically a celebration of what we have done and accomplished in the previous year. But as you know, 2020 has been off to a rocky and atypical start. So we can visit GeorgetownDC.com for a summary of what we've accomplished in 2019, and it was quite a lot, in our annual report there. But today we'd like to concentrate and focus on looking forward rather than back. Today we're grateful to come together as a community to connect during a challenging time, not only for Georgetown, but for our country. We've experienced a range of emotions and circumstances, both personally and professionally, during the confluence of a pandemic, economic crisis, and now reckoning with racial injustice in our country. It's a period in history unlike any I've actually seen in my lifetime, and it presents a critical opportunity for Georgetown to evolve on many levels. We have much work to do, and it begins most importantly with listening and reconnecting, not only with each other in our community, but with our mission statement as an organization. So the BID board and staff are very focused about our members, yet so impressed with the ways in which our members have already adapted to these unprecedented times. We're working hard to hear and address your needs, concerns, and ideas for the future in Georgetown. And we've pivoted our programming and our staff's time and effort to respond to the multiple crises. We don't yet have all the answers, and there's a lot of work ahead. This is a very resilient community that's evolved many times over in the course of its nearly 300-year history. It's a history we should look to in thinking about how we got here, what's working, what isn't, and what we envision for the future of Georgetown, in spite of the uncertainties. Today, you'll hear from three of our leading DC members, including the mayor, who will share their own perspectives on that path forward. We love Georgetown, and we know so many Washingtonians and visitors alike love being in Georgetown. As we work together to reopen, rebuild, recover, our top priority is to ensure everyone feels safe, comfortable, and welcome. So we will commit with you to creating an even better experience for all. I would now like to hand our next segment over to Greg Caston, who is our board BID treasurer and head of Tony's Seafood, Tony and Joe's Seafood Place, for our financial report. Before I do, Greg, I want to thank you personally for your efforts, in particular with Andrew Blair, John Hayes, and Morgan Williams, for leading our Georgetown Relief Program, which was so far handed out over 545 recipients, small funds, but very important ones for help them, as those employees are the hardest hit in our market. We've so far partnered with Halcyon to contribute $163,000 in that effort, and there's more on the way. So thank you so much, Greg, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Bruce, and let me just say I echo your comments about the situation and looking forward and doing the right thing and being the leaders that Georgetown has been for so long. And with that, let me get into the financial situation. As you can see, there's a slide that may appear to show a negative net assets for some of you who don't understand or don't see the BID budget on an annual basis. This is really the end of a 5-year term where we are closing the books on a bunch of funds that may appear to be misleading and show that we're actually operating at a negative. We are not borrowing money. What we are doing is using the end of 5-year budgets that were in surplus in the first 2 and 3 years of our 5-year approval and are now being finished off, and that's what shows. And also I did want to bring to Bruce's to your attention something Bruce already brought about was that we did pivot as a board and change some of the focus and spending with all of the board's approval, of course, to help those. And I appreciate the comment about the money for the COVID, because that was a really difficult chore for a lot of people that were involved, to see the people and the pain they went through, and knowing that our bid was able to support them and sponsor them and help people at least take another step in the journey through this long process. And with that, you see the revenues and the expenses are clearly on the board, and we are poised and ready with assets and a great staff to go forward into the future and lead Georgetown back into prominence of being the destination it is. And with that, that's my report. I would then hand it off to Michael Savage. He's a fellow board member of the U.S. Trust who chaired our annual board election process. And I hope, Mike, you're ready to announce those results.
I am. I'm ready to go. Thank you, Greg. This year's Georgetown BID Board of Directors elections presented both owner and tenant candidates who are up for renewal for a 3-year term. Re-elected to the board for the class of 2023 are the following: Ahmad Ashgar, Falafel Inc., Bruce Batchik, J Street Companies, Ginger Latham, Carlton Holdings, Kenneth Marshall, Friends of Legal Services Corporation, Michael Eves from Jamestown LP, and Richard Levy from the Levy Group. Re-elected Georgetown BID tenants are Awakwawu, TAA Public Relations, Beth Auberg, Random Harvest, Billy Martin from Martin's Tavern, and Greg Caston from Tony and Joe's Seafood Place. Now, I'd like to bring back Bruce to talk about the BID bylaws revisions that were on the ballot this year. Bruce?
Sorry. And to make policies that were consistent with other business improvement districts and the DC nonprofit statute. To give the board of directors greater flexibility in the appointment of non-voting board members, and to require that the executive committee meetings be distributed to all board members within 2 weeks of a meeting. Those approved and revised bylaws can be seen on our website if you have any questions. I'd also like next to announce and discuss and thank our current board of directors. You can see those listed on the screen who are on the executive committee, and we have a fairly large staff behind them and behind our organization that is just doing terrific work in our market. I'd like to thank longstanding and outgoing BID board member Ed Solomon of Anthony's Tuxedo for his years of service to the organization. Finally, I can tell you that having worked with a couple of BIDs, this is the finest staff I have ever worked with that Joe has both inherited and then subsequently augmented and assembled, who do a wonderful job on your behalf. And as Greg mentioned earlier, they've had to pivot into a pretty difficult adjustment here for 2020, and they've done it in style. So I compliment all of you and thank you for making all of us successful. And I think with that, I'm going to hand the agenda to John Weavenson. John?
Thanks, Bruce. My name is John Weavenson, the Operations Director for the Georgetown BID, and it's my pleasure to introduce the annual Clean Team Member Award. Every year, this is very hard for us to choose just one team member. Our team does a great job, so many things, keeping Georgetown beautiful and welcoming to all. They work 363 days a year through all kinds of weather conditions. This year, the entire team stepped up every way possible through truly unprecedented times and job demands. Everyone knows their daily tasks of keeping the streets clean, emptying trash cans, abating graffiti, repairing bricks, all. And recently they added night patrols, enhanced cleaning, PPE distribution to their workload. Every team member has been dedicated frontline worker for our commercial district. And for the first time ever, we decided to recognize the entire team with this award. We are grateful for all of you have done, continue to do, and how you serve our community.
Yay.
Look at that great team. Thanks, guys. We appreciate you. Now, I'd like to introduce BID Vice President and Marketing Director, Nancy Miyahira. She will be presenting the annual Community Leadership Award.
Thank you so much, John. That is so amazing to see our men in blue. Each year, we honor and celebrate the contributions of at least one BID member business who has done an extraordinary work for our community with the Community Leadership Award. This year, the decision was easy, to honor not just one business, but the entire Georgetown BID business community, all who have given so much, not only throughout the year, but especially during the COVID-19 crisis. We saw FrameBridge quickly pivot to using their acrylic framing material to make thousands of PPE face shields for frontline workers. Soapbox started to produce hand sanitizer, now widely available, allowing them to donate more soap to communities in need around the world. Our many bridal stores, seamstresses, and tailors started to make masks for local hospitals and even share patterns and how-tos online for the general public. Our restaurants saw the need all over, from keeping their workers employed with delivery and pickup, but also making food for essential workers and food insecure communities. Many quickly moved to set up their own employee relief funds, as well as help the BID get relief to laid off workers all throughout Georgetown. And though most retail was shut down, some stayed open to help people with their new modes of transportation like bikes, make someone's day with flowers, send uplifting messages, or pivot to online programming like the virtual Georgetown French Market. We may not have shown every business's efforts here in these slides, but please know we are really humbled and thankful for the way that everybody has stepped up. And in the last 2 weeks, businesses have stepped up once again to show empathy, resolve, and resilience. You are all leaders in our community, and you inspire us here at the BID to work even harder to get Georgetown coming back stronger than ever before. Thank you, Georgetown BID business community. And now I'd like to introduce Joe Sternley, Georgetown BID CEO and President, to talk about the state of Georgetown as we look to rebuild, reopen, and recover.
Thanks, Nancy, and welcome to everybody who is on the call today. I see the count is 242 people, which is almost twice what we usually get at an annual meeting. So we're very grateful for everybody. So if Debbie, you could start advancing the slides, please. I want to break up what we're working on right now into 3 sections, really where we were before the COVID outbreak and the stay-at-home order, where we have been over the last few weeks, and where we're going. And that's really where I want to spend the bulk of the time. Prior to the 15th of March, we had 450 occupied storefront businesses, in addition to the 800 or 900 office tenants that we have in Georgetown. 43 of those storefronts were vacant or for lease, and 15 appeared to be vacant, but were actually leased and were in the process of getting permits and getting ready to open. So we had 450 operating businesses. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that just about 12 days ago, we were down from 450 to 60 that were open for takeout and delivery only, primarily food establishments, although CVS was also open, and a couple other businesses were doing little bits of carry-out business. But 390 businesses closed during COVID and have been closed now for quite some time. Still with 43 vacant leases. That actually is a number that's going to be going up in the next few weeks as we announce a number of folks who have now announced they're not coming back, and 15 who were in the works to come back. All but one have told us that they're still planning on opening when they're allowed to. On the next slide, you'll see really the picture. We track pedestrian. The blue line is January to May 2019. The orange line is the same period in 2020. And from the time that the first COVID case was announced, you see our pedestrian counts in Georgetown. These are people who don't live in the BID, but come from outside the BID, plummeted from what would have been about 300,000 a week very quickly down to somewhere in the neighborhood of about 10,000 a week. But you will see that after the stay-at-home order was lifted, we started seeing a slight uptick and a positive trend, people starting to come back. Unfortunately, that was just a couple days before what we experienced in the next slide, which was, there's one other thing that we were doing during this period, which is really focused. We were working hand in glove with the Glover Park and the Georgetown Main Streets and with the mayor's office. The mayor's office delivered to us 45 pallets of PPE materials to distribute to those businesses that plan to open in phase one. We've created about 200 of these signs of this size and a size that you'll see on the poles around asking people to be healthy, protect themselves and their fellow citizens by wearing a mask in public. And that's where we were really focused. Go to the next slide, please. And then we had the events of a week ago, Saturday and Sunday, where we had 57 businesses vandalized, 42 of which were looted. The mayor and her chief of staff spent Monday morning touring Georgetown, talking with small businesses, seeing what the situation looked like. Really quite a disaster and a double whammy for businesses that were struggling to come back. In the next slide is really where we are today. As of a couple days ago, we had 184 buildings in Georgetown that were boarded up. And folks are looking for guidance on when it is that they can take these boards down and get started again. And we're working on that now. In the next slide, I want to talk about sort of where we've been and where we're going. And that is, we've had no new incidents reported in the last 9 days. We do see some boards starting to come down because we know that people want to return. Our business folks want to return and our customers want to return. Restaurants with outdoor seating are filling up when the weather's good. And our BID staff has been helping with DDOT getting permitting to do outdoor dining in public space, streeteries, as DDOT and the mayor's office are calling them. And we're currently helping, I think 3 or 4 get new permits so that they can get reopened with outdoor seating. And then when phase 2 begins, which we hope will be soon, we're going to be opening to, as Greg mentioned, some improvements in our public realm, at least, where DDOT will have completed the repaving of both M Street and Wisconsin Avenue and give us a palette on which we can do more work. On the next slide, everybody should be aware that the ANC at its meeting 2 weeks ago, or a week ago, I'm sorry, did pass a resolution to support DDOT's and the mayor's effort to create more sidewalk space for social distancing. That it's one of the most important things that we can do is create a safe environment for public health. We see in those parts of the country where people have not been taking the public health threat from COVID seriously. Cases are rising. It's something that public health people say is going to be a hammer and a dance where you hammer everything down. And if you open up too quickly and too liberally, let's say, you have to hammer it back down again after a short dance. And I think we're seeing that in other parts of the country. We want to avoid that so that every time we open up, it's a progression where we can create safe spaces where people can operate and their businesses and the customers can come back and feel safe. So we're looking at various different ideas from around the world on things that we can do with the city to create safer space, keeping in mind that we also have to make sure that businesses can function with deliveries, with takeouts, with trash pickup, and all the things they need to function. Next, please. So you know that we've done a plan like this with various different options for every block in the Georgetown Commercial District. The city has provided us with a list of every place where they think the sidewalks are too narrow. We've been doing our own measuring as well, and we're looking for opportunities to create safe pedestrian zones and also places where we can do outdoor dining and where retailers can stage. Next, please. So where do we go from here? In addition to the work that we're going to be doing with the city on creating safer spaces, we're going to be spending a lot more energy on marketing to convince people that it is in fact safe to come back to Georgetown when it is, and to encourage them to do so. Transportation improvements, placemaking, a focus on inclusion, and public safety. Next, please. So in conclusion, Georgetown is 269 years old, and it's always evolved and it's always adapted. It is not the same Georgetown as it was 30 years ago or 50 years ago or 100 years ago, and it's going to have to adapt again. In the coming months, we'll need to evolve again to meet the challenges of the new retail realities. Many of those we were facing before, such as the competition from the internet and other neighborhoods, the COVID virus that's yet to be tamed, and really need to spend some hard time working on the urgency of racial justice that's become a responsibility for every community in America, including Georgetown. And it's our responsibility to join that effort to address it. We intend to take on all these issues, and I want to say that Georgetown will rise again and better. And with that, I'll turn it back over. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. So the meat of our program today, beyond describing to you what the BID has been accomplishing, is hearing from several of our leaders in the community. And our theme this year is rebuilding, reopening, and recovering. We're fortunate to have this esteemed group of leaders with us to hear their perspectives on how Georgetown can move together.
I can't see you.
From immediate first steps to help building businesses long-term. We'll hear from each speaker, and then we'll have time for a few questions for those of you who have been asking from our meeting attendees. Obviously, with 250 people, we won't get to everybody. Please type your questions in the Q&A, and our moderator will be facilitating them. If you aren't able to get to your question today, we will make every effort to respond to you after the meeting. And now I'd like to introduce our speakers. First, of course, we have Mayor Muriel Bowser, Mayor of the District of Columbia, who will be joining us just after 3:30. Our first speaker in order would be then Jack DeGioia. John has been the president of Georgetown University since 2001, and we're excited to have him on board. Finally, Dan Tangerlini. Dan has a long history with the district, is currently the chief financial officer of Emerson Collective, a social change organization that uses broad range of tools, including philanthropy, impact investing, and policy solutions to create the greatest good for the greatest number of people. So, President DeGioia.
Thank you, Bruce.
Welcome again. I have to tell you, the first time I met you was when you handed my daughter her diploma on graduation, and it's been a great relationship since. So thank you for making time to be with us today.
Thank you.
The last 4 months have probably been among the most challenging of your long and special tenure at Georgetown. And what we'd like to hear from you is what you foresee happening on campus this fall, and what you think the impact of the changes that you're planning may have on the Georgetown commercial district.
Well, thank you so much, Bruce. I can't thank you enough. It's an honor to be here. I think Joe framed the challenges that we're going to be engaging in his presentation just a moment ago, and specifically the two key challenges of ensuring that as a community, we respond to the challenges of racial justice and our responsibilities with the pandemic. I think this is an opportunity for us to do the most important work of our lifetimes. And I think we will manifest our deepest moral commitments as we respond to this opportunity presented to us now through the civic encounters that have been taking place across our city and across our nation, and how we respond to the responsibilities we have to one another for each other's health and safety. We've never been more aware than we are right now of the institutional structures that perpetuate inequity and inequality. We've seen that in the convergence of the pandemic and these challenges that we must address related to racial justice. As we know, African Americans in our country have been hit disproportionately hard by COVID-19, and this will be our moment. and we as a community to be able to address the structures, the underlying structures, the institutional structures that sustain inequity and inequality that are part of the enduring legacy of our history. So when we come back this fall, I expect that those two dynamics, more than anything, will be framing how we engage the work of the university. And I think we'll be guided by a set of commitments as we come together as a community, first and foremost to the health and safety of one another. The second would be to sustaining our mission as an institution of higher learning. And then third, to do as much as we possibly can to contribute to sustaining the livelihoods of the members of our community. We've got multiple dimensions to how we intend to move forward, but we will always be led first and foremost by our responsibilities for public health. We recognize that whatever we do, we'll only be able to mitigate given what we know about the virus to date and the disease. So we'll take a layered approach, which will ensure we've got multiple dimensions to how we try to ensure the safety in our community. Our academic approach, our models for this fall will likely be different than we've ever seen before. There'll be more of a hybrid and flexible approach on a continuum between being fully present and fully virtual, trying to get the right combination that enables us to balance that key question of density. How much density will we be able to sustain? How can we ensure the appropriate level of social distancing and the proper behavior regarding face coverings and the like? So we're engaged right now in the question of how many members of our community will be able to bring back, how much of our faculty will be able to come back to campus, how many will need to teach through virtual learning, how many of our students we can bring back, and how we'll structure our life together in our communities.
Thank you, President. And for many universities, for many years, they've been separate from the communities that they've served. They were insular, they were separated. Clearly, in the last 10 years, Georgetown has made vast strides to change and also address its own history relative to racial inequities and the like. So this is not a start for you, but a continuation, of course, of what you've been involved in. As one of the largest employers and really the head of an institution that continues to produce some of the finest minds in public service in the country, where do you see the university's greatest efforts as being internally focused on your organization and the people who are there, or externally with the community? What are your thoughts?
Sure, Bruce. Well, and it connects actually to the last question that you asked. We know we have responsibilities internal to the university. We've got to ensure we can protect the health and safety of the members of our community and how we engage in our classrooms, in our laboratories, our libraries, on our athletic fields and the like. And there's we have to accept and recognize that we are in a pandemic, and our first priority is to the health and safety of our community. But the civic encounters that we have experienced in these last couple of weeks, right here in our city and across the nation, we recognize that you're kind to say that depth of our engagement has been ever stronger. There's a deep history to our engagement in the city. Our students have been immersed in community service across the city. Our legal clinics are regarded as the best in the nation coming out of our law school. Our medical center provides care through our mobile vans and outreach services. And I think going forward, this level of engagement will need to be ever deeper. Just last week, Christopher King, a member of our faculty, issued a second report through the DC Commission on African American Affairs on health disparities. We have a Center for Health Disparities by the Navy Yard, run by Lucille Adams Campbell of our faculty. We offer academic programs in DC jail. We don't intend to turn inward. Going forward, our engagement will grow deeper and deeper. And it will require real imagination in ensuring the continuity of this engagement as we go forward, recognizing some of the constraints that we will confront because of the pandemic.
Sure. Well, thank you, Jack. Joe, I know you have a question or two that you might like to ask our president. as well as our
Bruce, I
participants.
believe the mayor has joined us. If you'd like to welcome her, I think she's now on the call.
Great. Well, welcome, Mayor.
Hi, Bruce. How are you?
Well, I am very well, thank you. And thank you for taking the time today to join us for our program. We obviously are anxious to hear from you on some of the many things that you've been challenged with of late. I can't imagine, having assumed your responsibilities some time ago, that anybody would have envisioned that the challenges that were in front of you that you've handled so elegantly. This has been a very difficult time, and as a longtime person committed to the district, I just want to compliment you on the way that you handled yourself in a very difficult time. So thank you again for being with us. You know, we clearly, Georgetown has a complex and often systemic history with racial injustice and inequality. The Black Lives Matter protests and calls for reform have highlighted the urgency with which we need to further confront those issues. How can our businesses, in addition to the BID, make meaningful steps to address our own role in the problem and be part of the solution with you?
Well, thank you for that question. And I'm always delighted to be with wonderful leaders like President Joya, who represents Georgetown around the world in a way that is excellent. And we are going to be relying on President Joya and his colleagues in higher education to bring back our students and faculty and employees safely. And we're looking forward to working with him on that. And I know we're expecting Dan Tangerlini, an alum of DC government, who knows a lot about how the engines of government can help in all of these ways. So I'm just really delighted to be here. And we saw boil over in our city and in our nation, certainly, demands for fairness and justice, not only in policing and criminal justice, but in our entire system. And I think that we have an opportunity, especially to listen to young people, because the demands that they are making, not all of them that we will agree with, but certainly that recognizing the humanity of our fellow Americans and our fellow African Americans has to be our focus. So we certainly in DC government are looking for every opportunity as we reopen to reinvest in communities that have been underinvested in and to open better than we were before. So we will continue to keep those focuses. Now, I had a chance to walk with Joe and a chance to meet with some business owners in Georgetown the other day, unfortunately, after a night of some considerable destruction in the community. I understand from my team that we saw 30 properties in Georgetown that were damaged, and we want to work with people, employees and managers to make sure that we're being as supportive as we can to get them back in business and get ready for phase 2 of reopening. And as I think about Georgetown, and it is very true that there is a complex history with racial equity that Georgetown has played. And I think about all of the communities of faith in Georgetown and some of the other missions, if you will, of Georgetown communities, especially in helping us in homelessness. So I know people may not always think of Georgetown as having a social network, but it has a pretty strong social network. And when you connect that, when I say social network, I mean a social service network. And I think when you connect that as well with some of the institutions like the university and the hospital, it makes it even stronger. I think that as we think about Georgetown business community, I think we have some more opportunities too. We're thinking about how people move around, how people eat out. We can also engage with the landlords and business owners about their staff and management and their outreach to the community. So I think that there are a number of things. I'm just thinking about the types of businesses and retailers, especially in Georgetown, that we can work in some of our more equitable reopen planning and thinking. I think the business community will also have a role to play in helping us communicate complex messages and do it in a way. We know a lot of the retailers are working with the best advertisers and marketers and have social media campaigns and the like that can help us communicate messages about getting tested, about isolation, and about all of the things that are going to help us in the long run with healthier outcomes for people. So we're all ears about how we can be partners with you. Even pre-pandemic, I know we've all been interested in things that will give the business district a shot in the arm and make sure that it continues to be a vibrant part of our retail and dining and recreation options in Washington, D.C., including making sure we have innovations in transportation that are allowing people to get around the city. So we'll continue to focus on those things.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a tough question for all of us, and we understand that the city's revenues overall were significantly impacted by the virus and then the business shutdown. Many of the store owners who are in Georgetown and small business operators have had no relief in real estate taxes. And this is an issue I know that you're aware of, and I think you and the council have been trying to deal with the reduction in revenues effectively, but could you address how you think those people should be handling this, given that they don't have revenue? I mean, we're literally no revenue for a majority of these small businesses. How do they meet their obligations to pay taxes?
So we understand that a lot of our businesses have taken advantage of the PPP program, which was a federal program. And I think there's a new information that comes, I think the number is 2.2 billion in the district in PPP. And we continue to hear more guidance from the Department of Treasury about how businesses can ensure that those loans are forgivable. And the guidance has actually improved as it relates to that guidance. So it is true that our revenues for this year that we're in, 2020, decreased by $800 million, and our revenues for next year, starting October, decreased by, I think, about $750 million. So we have a balanced budget in front of the council that really looked across the government at the various efficiencies we can find, cuts that we could make, and we've made those while investing in the things that have made our city vibrant. And that's what we will continue to do. Now, an across the board property tax decrease would prevent us from running the government in the way and investing across the board in the things that make us a city where you want to do business. So that was something that we as a local government couldn't solve on our own. We continue to push for federal funds. As you know, we think there will be another CARES Act. There's a lot of lobbying going on at the Hill for various sectors, including hotels, large venues. I know that the retailers have also been in that mix, but that's what we have to continue to look for, the mix of the federal and the local, because we won't be able to solve with our local funds all of the need that the COVID response has created.
Thank you, Madam
Mm-hmm.
Mayor. Joe, I know we've got a couple of more questions that I believe our participants may have, or that you've got prepared for the mayor.
I do, although I think you were going to bring in Dan for a comment? Is that
Happy
okay?
to do. Dan, you're still with us?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm here. Thank you
All
very
right.
much, Bruce. And it's so great to see the mayor and the president. I don't know what I keep doing to get myself between mayors and presidents, but it's a wonderful position to be in. And Mayor, I'm going to take the moment to just compliment you on your tremendous leadership, your calm, constructive, and creative leadership in these dual areas of the COVID response and the social unrest. You've really been threading the needle. We're all very proud of you, and anything we can do to help, I'm sure all of us are committed to doing that. And President DeJoy, I just want to also compliment the Georgetown University for its leadership on the issues of reparations and reconciliation. And I think that there's tremendous a tremendous amount for everyone to learn from the journey you've been taking. And I think the time is now for the university to share that lesson. I had the honor and the pleasure nearly 20 years ago today to start a very interesting relationship with the neighborhood of Georgetown. I'm always surprised that I get invited back to events in Georgetown, because it was 20 years ago today that we had the exploding manholes that led to a 3-year construction project that was day, night, weekends. It was stunning to me that at the end of the 3-year project, I actually received an award from this organization. And when I received the reward, I said, this is a very bad incentive structure you have if you're going to give people rewards for doing that kind of thing. But to be perfectly honest, it's really a metaphor for the situation you find yourself in. Joe said it really well. Georgetown has changed and changed and changed again. It's not just a neighborhood in Washington, D.C., it's the first neighborhood in Washington, D.C. And it evolved from being a port town and the end of the C&O Canal and an industrial place to being the wonderful international destination it is today. And you're just going to have to do what you've always done, and that's evolve. But the infrastructure exists in Georgetown. It exists through the BID. It exists through your community. It exists through the Four Seasons dining room, which will eventually reopen. You have what everyone in the neighborhood really, really aspires to have, which is a dedicated, focused, committed community. And it's one of those communities that when I had the honor of working for the mayor's task force on reopening, we said every community should be like Georgetown. It should be a 20-minute community where everything you need is a 20-minute walk from your home, your job, medical, your place of worship, and your recreation. How do we take the lessons of Georgetown, extend them more broadly to the community? And how do we take the community and welcome them into Georgetown? Georgetown should, as it thinks about this next opportunity, think about more affordable housing. It should think about more transportation options. It should listen to the mayor, her task force, and do things like dedicate more right-of-way to restaurants and shops so that they can get open again in a world of social distancing. It should de-emphasize cars and re-emphasize the ability for people to walk, bike, and take transit. I would personally tear down the Whitehurst Freeway, but that's my thing. You know, that doesn't have to be everyone else's. I would continue the work that you've done over the many decades of innovating and experimenting and working together, and even discussing and arguing over even the smallest details. It's one of the great things about Georgetown, and I think you just keep doing that, and you will continue to make the progress and be the vital component of the city that you've been for its entire history.
Well, Dan, I expected you would continue to be a great visionary and thinking about Georgetown, and thank you for your history. And believe me, you are always welcome back. And I'm going to ask the mayor again to respond while we've got you, and we've got a few minutes, Madam Mayor, perhaps to a couple of other questions Joe may have, and then we'll get back to you, Dan, and to President DeJoy.
The first question comes from Corinne Krashik, the owner of Corinne's Bridal. Mayor, I own a bridal salon and we work by appointment only. Can we be a part of phase 1 opening since we are appointment only? If not, do we know when phase 2 will start?
Corinne, we think that we will be in phase 2, we hope, in the the mid to latter. Our health department tells us that June 19th is the earliest that we could hit our metrics. And I'm hopeful that our numbers will continue to trend down as they have been. We do, it doesn't sound like your business fits into phase one, but we do have a waiver process that you could go to coronavirus.dc.gov and somebody can give it the once over.
Thank you, Mayor. Second question was from David Bernan, the General Manager of the Four Seasons for President Joya. Hello, Jack. Will you have a school schedule posted soon so we can make business plans? For example, will Parents' Weekend take place and draw the usual crowds to Georgetown, or do you have other plans to bring students back to help businesses?
Thanks very much, and thanks, David. It's premature for us to be able to say now. We work within the framework of Reopen DC, and we also need to have the approval of mayor and city officials. So we're working together closely in a very collaborative and cooperative way with the mayor's team. Whatever we do, it won't be what it was a year ago. It will be different. We're going to need to have in place a very strong public health framework in order to meet our obligations to the city. At the same time, it is in our interest, it's a driving assumption for us, is that it is in the interest of our academic mission to welcome as many students as is safely possible back for as much in-person instruction as we possibly can. We're preparing for, as I said earlier, hybrid and flexible approaches. We are intending right now to begin the semester as we normally would at the end of August. We start bringing folks back a bit earlier in August, but what we would have, our opening toward the end of August. And one thing that we're thinking about is perhaps finishing by Thanksgiving because of the concerns of having young people traveling twice in a 2-week period. Thanksgiving is particularly late this year. So we want to make sure we're doing our best to try to minimize the kind of movement of young people from our campus home and back again. I don't know that we'll have the same kind of big public events. Even under phase 3, there are limitations to the kinds of public events that we could have. And so we're working all those questions through, David, and my sense is we'll probably be in a better place toward the end of June and early July to know exactly what it will look like for us coming this fall.
Could I just add that, and thank you, Dr. Joya, for that. We have, and we laid out in our phase 1 order that the universities are kind of working through a modified campus plan process that they go through every 10 years or so with our Office of Planning, and this time with the Department of Health. So they are developing plans that we want to help them work through with all of the public health information that we have and any other kind of extraordinary things that the district can do in helping them plan. So we recognize the very important role that the universities play, not only for their students, but their staff and the surrounding community. So we are hopeful that we will be right there with them for a fall opening.
Thank you, Mayor. We have a question from Mr. Tangerlini, anonymous. If you were running the bid today, what would you be focused on short-term and long-term to aid a speedy and equitable recovery?
The first thing I'd be focused on is finding a way to replace myself with Joe Sternlieb. And then I think, I actually think the mayor's task force report, which didn't maybe get as much attention as it should have for obvious reasons and important reasons, reasons of people reacting to the murder of George Floyd. But I think that the mayor's report laid out very clearly that there's several layers of perspective. There's the immediate response, and I think what we heard from the bid report is the PPE distribution and really sending a message to people that Georgetown and the broader community of Washington, D.C. is a safe place, and we're going to do everything we can in our power as a community to make it safe and keep it safe. And then begin the process of implementing ourselves in. I don't know anyone who's lived in the world of a pandemic, certainly not in a novel coronavirus pandemic. So we have to figure it out. We have to figure it out together. We have to give people like you, Joe, a little bit of room for experimentation. We have to give our businesses the opportunity to try different things. And then we have to give a little bit of patience and sympathy to our political leaders like the mayor, who are trying really hard to thread the needle. And then I think what's also just as important is for us to begin to grasp the possibility of a better new future. And I think that that's really the exciting thing. Like, let's use this moment not as just one of tragedy and disappointment, but let's use this moment as something that's meaningful and important, that gives us some sense of where we want to go. I forgot to mention, the gondola. Maybe we should be thinking of some kind of set of directions and visions we'd love to see for our community and our city that makes it an appealing place for people to continue to come to. And I think that that's what's drawn people here to the city over the last 2 decades, and that's what's going to want to keep them coming back. And so I think you have to think in terms of short, medium, and long term. And what I admire about the mayor's plan is it looked at all 3.
Dan, that actually wasn't an anonymous question. That was Joe's question.
Oh, okay.
Mayor, I have a question for you on the heels of the council's actions yesterday to potentially curtail police issues. This is obviously a very sensitive and important subject because we all need to be safe, and we all need to recognize that people have the right to protest and to support those people. So where did you fall out in how you felt the council was handling this issue? And do you think we're in the right place yet? I think you said something about more community input.
Yeah, so I think that they did, they had several pieces to this that range from how to deal with chokeholds, which is a horrible thing that we witnessed on TV. But it codifies a practice of prohibiting chokeholds that's already in place in the general orders for the Metropolitan Police Department. So it codified something that we already have recognized should be prohibited in law enforcement. There's a provision that expands the Police Complaints Board, for example. That's a board that's been in existence for 20 years. It expands it. We would have some concerns about removing some members that they put in the law, but I think we have some time to revisit that. They do some things around the body-worn camera, as I understand it, which we thought should have been pulled out and handled separately, but again, we'll continue to work with them on that. What they discussed, but I don't think moved on, was an amendment to put a cap on the number of police officers that the force can hire. So they didn't deal with that yesterday. I would pay attention to that coming back during the budget discussion, because I submitted my budget to the council 3 weeks ago. And so I would pay attention to that. My position is I submitted to the council what we need for public safety, both for MPD and for intervention programs that are considered non-traditional law enforcement interventions, and for opportunity programs for schools, a 3% increase, a infrastructure academy for more jobs, and other ways to get people greater opportunity in the District of Columbia. Now, as it relates to policing, I don't have to tell anybody on this call that our population has grown, our businesses have grown, our number of activities have grown, and with that, our calls for police service have grown. And so when we talk about changing the number of police officers that Chief Newsham can deploy, we're also saying that those calls would have to be redistributed somehow. And what that means is either they would go unanswered or people would have longer waits for calls for service when they call 911. So we have to think about some very practical things when we talk about changing the number of officers that we have. We feel like the number in the budget is what we need, and that's what we will continue to advocate with the council.
Yeah, Bruce,
Joe?
I know that we're running short of time, and I want to assure the people, we still have about 240 people on the call. Many of the questions that were posted in the Q&A are actually for the bid, and we have everybody's email. We will get back to you, and for those that are being asked to the mayor, her staff, we'll also forward those to the appropriate folks on her staff to get back to folks. I wanted to let President DeGioia know that a number of the comments and questions are related to the university, coming back, and I think people appreciate the needle he's trying to thread, but want to make sure that he understands that there's an enormous amount of support from the business community, because the codependency of the business community on the university being up and running. We had a call from, or a question for the mayor from Sally Canzaroni from the Washington Makers Gallery. The Black Lives Matter mural is a wonderful example of how public art can inspire people. Do you have plans to use public art in other parts of the city, like Georgetown, as part of the reopening?
We don't have any immediate plans, but we're certainly open for it. Murals DC is the DC program that we use for Black Lives Matter Plaza. And we have other opportunities, including with our DC Arts and Humanities Commission, to commission art. And quite frankly, I think that we do a good job with performances and supporting venues, but we could focus on stepping up our efforts in the public realm.
Thank you very much. I believe we're at 4 o'clock, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I'd like to thank our panelists once again for taking the time to be with us. You've got so many other areas that you're focused on that are critically important, and your candid discussions with us today were invaluable. And again, we look forward to working with you in the future to create a better Georgetown and a better city. And I'd like to thank all of the panelists once again, and in particular our staff and our board and our members. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
To everyone.
Oh.